Good morning. Today is Thursday. Today we are learning the 10th and final Perek of Maseches Eiruvin. Baruch Hashem. It's a long Perek, so we're going to get right into it. Today's shiur is the Nishmas Aaron Nachman Sucha Kohen Yishol Marcha B'Shepsel Bracha Sar B'Shmuel Leib B'Nema Moshe Ben Yosef Ben Hashem Masal Heaven Aliyah. And before Shlev Adasar Bas Leichan Pesel Bas Yanti Shol Ben Rachel Lei Rachel Bas Pesel Zelda Aram Yitzchak Ben Risha Chaya Bas Dobe Bela before Shlev Basok Shar Choli Yisrael. Here we go. Mishnah Aleph Hamotze Tefillin. If someone finds several pairs of tefillin in a field or unsafe place on Shabbos, or Machnisan Zug Zug, he should bring them in pair by pair, meaning that he should wear them, he should put them on, wear them, transport them to safety, take them off, and go back and forth and do this until they're all brought to safety. Rabbi Gamliel says, Shnaim, Shnaim, he may bring them in two by two, meaning that he can wear two pairs of tefillin at a time. There are some people, there is an opinion. No, so we know we don't wear tefillin on Shabbos for the mitzvah, but in such a situation when they have to be saved from being desecrated, then the Chachamim allowed people to wear them in Rishus Harab because they can be considered like a takshit, like an adornment. Even two pairs of tefillin can be worn together as an adornment since there's room on the head for two pairs. You'll see sometimes, like the Sfardim or the Temanim, they wear two pairs of tefillin at one time. You might not notice it because they're usually covering the second one with their yarmulke, and so it's like covered. You only see one exposed, but they do wear it. So we bring them to safety. In which case, where does that apply? The shadows in the case of oat tefillin, which have markings that show that they are definitely tefillin. I love the chadashos, but in the case of new ones, which might not be tefillin, he's pater. He should not save them by wearing them in a public domain. Meaning, if the tefillin are old, that even if the straps are untied, then the knots are discernible. But if the tefillin new, then there's no way to know that they were actually real tefillin, or maybe it's an amulet. Because it wasn't done the Shem so if it wasn't fully finished, then it might not be considered tefillin. So you're talking about a pair that's already been used and is for sure that it's a pair of tefillin. Matzah sivasim or krichos. If you found them tied in numerous pairs or in large bundles, and there's so many of them to secure them all before nightfall, machshich aleihem emavian. You should stay with them. You should guard them until nightfall, and then bring them to a safe place. With Hakana, however, if by wearing or staying with the tefillin, he puts themselves into danger, Mechasan, he should just cover them and leave. We're talking about a time of Shmad, where it was usher to practice Judaism publicly, and anyone found with tefillin would be punished. So therefore, the only option is to save your life and to cover the tefillin and leave. But if you're just worried about being attacked by thieves, or then he can't abandon the tefillin because he has another ways of protecting them. Certainly, to save your life, you could just abandon them. No one should ever have to be faced with this situation. So let's keep it theoretical. Mishnah Beis, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, no, it's only chaveros, they're carrying them 4 hours at a time. You should give them to a friend who is standing with the 4 hours to him. The chaver, his friend should give them to him, and pass it along a chain. Ad shemagil is until the last one reaches the outermost courtyard of the city, where the tefillin can be left in safety. But no, Similarly, so if a child, if a baby is born in a field on Shabbos, it must be brought to a place where he will be taken care of. Not the chavero, you should give to it. You should give the infant to his friend, the chavero, and his friend to his friend, like a whole chain. I feel a mea, even if he's going to be handled by 100 people, which is uncomfortable. This is preferable. This method is preferred over this one person carrying the baby up all the way less than 4 hours at a time. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, sin adam chavis chavero. Even if a person found an oilers barrel in a rishus harabim, he may give the barrel to his friend, the chavero, and his friend to his friend. I feel chutz l'tchum. It could even be transported this manner even outside the tchum, more than 2,000 amos from where it was found. Lo, the Chava said to him, Lo, Sahalech Zu Yosem Miragli Baleha. This barrel may not go farther than the feet of its owner, meaning that it must be treated as though it had an owner, just as an own barrel is confined to a tchum, so too here. Therefore, it cannot be taken on 2,000 amos from its place. Mishnah Gimel. Hayakari b'sefer al haiskava. If one was reading a book or reading a Torah scroll, like take a handwritten scroll, not necessarily Sefer Torah, but a cloth. It could have been like Tanakh, while sitting on a porch that's a Carmelist. This gagal has Sefer Miyado, and one end of the scroll rolled out of his hand, landed on the ground of the Rishus Harabim. Golo Etzlo, he may roll it toward himself. So even though it's a button to transfer an object from Rishus Harabim to a Carmelist, the Chachamim lifted the prohibition so that the ksav, the cloth, which is kedusha, will not be left in a demeaning situation. Haya Kori Rosh Hagag, if he was reading the scroll while sitting on top of a rooftop, he's reading from the cloth on the rooftop, which is a Rishus Hayachid, when his gagol slipped from Yado and one end of it fell out of his hand. Ashlo Higila start twachim before Tolach is that before it came within 10 tvachim of the ground of the Rishus Harabim, Golo Etzel, he may roll it toward himself. Mishagila start tvachim, but once it comes within 10 tvachim of the ground, he may not roll it in. Hafcho al aksav, rather you should turn it over onto its writing and leave it. So that the written side should be turned over rather than to be exposed. That's less of a chilul, according to the Mishnah. Okay, we're still on Gimel. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Afilu misalik misulak min haaretz ela kimalo macha." Even if it was removed from the ground by only the width of a needle, it's suspended in the air just a small distance from the ground. Golo etzel, he may roll it toward himself, since it's not resting on a surface. Bringing it back into the Rishus HaYachid is mutter. Rabbi Shimon says, "I feel but aretz atzmu," even if the scroll is on the ground itself of the Rishus HaRabim. Golo etzel, he may roll it toward himself. There's nothing prohibited by it. The Rabbanan stands in the way of preserving the kedusha of the Kisvei Kodesh. That's it's a very high level, and you need to be careful of that. Mishnah Dal, if a ledge in front of a window, if there's a ledge in front of the window and it juts out more than 10 tvachim above the ground of the Rishus Harabim, nosnin alav the notes limimena b'Shabbos. We may put objects on it and take objects from it on Shabbos. Since the ledge is more than 10 tvachim above the ground, it's not considered part of other Rishus Harabim, and therefore people within the house, they can take from it within 3 tvachim. Um, Omeid Adam Rishus Hayachim Etalta Rishus Harab. If a person may stand in a Rishus Harab, Rishus Hayachid, and move objects into the Rishus Harabim, Rishus Harabim Etalta Rishus Yachid, or you can stand in a public domain and move objects into a private domain. Bevaj lo yotzi chutz mi'arba amos. However, in the first case, when he stands in a Rishus Hayachid and moves objects into a Rishus Harabim, it is mutter only if he does not take them beyond 4 amos. Because he cannot move an object more than 4 amos from its original place, because doing so is a malacha d'oraisa. Mishnah Hey. Lo yamad adam b'rishus hayachid b'yashtim b'rishus harabim. A person may not stand in Rishus Hayachid and urinate into a Rishus Harabim, Rishus Harabim Yashtim Rishus Hayachid, or stand in a Rishus Harabim and urinate into a Rishus Hayachid, because by doing so he's transferring the urine from one Rishus to another. So too, a person may not spit from one domain to another. Rabbi says, Af mishenislas ruka b'fiv. Also, when one saliva becomes detached in his mouth, he's collected it in his mouth to the point where he's ready to spit it out. He may not walk 4 amos in the Rishus Harabim until he spits it out, since it's ready to be expelled from his mouth. It is no longer considered part of his body, but it's something that he's carrying in his mouth, and therefore he cannot move until he gets rid of it. Mishnah Vav. Lo yamud adam Rishus Hayachid Rishus Harabim. A person may not stand in a private domain and lean forward to drink from a cup or pitcher that is in the public domain. Rishus Harabim v'yishte Rishus Hayachid. Or can he stand in a public domain and lean forward and drink from a cup that is in a private domain? Because he might unthinkably bring the drink, the utensil back into the domain where he's standing and be guilty of hotzah, or transferring from one rishus to another. This is us unless he brings his head and the majority of his body into the domain which he is drinking. In which case the Chachamim were not concerned that he will transfer the cup from one domain to the other. The same law applies to a wine press in regards to the laws of Meiser. Grapes that have been gathered, we discussed this like a while ago during Meisers, that grapes that have been gathered but not fully processed into wine do not yet need to have Meiser separated from them. Although the Chamim asked eating or drinking from the grapes or the juice before Meisering them, they did allow snacking from them until the wine has been fully processed, which is when the Meiser obligation takes effect. For this reason, when grapes are made into wine, one may take a drink from the juice in the upper vat of the wine press, even though Meiser was not separated from the grapes before they were pressed. So the Mishnah teaches that even drinking from the upper vat is mutter only when one is standing with his head a majority of his body over the vat. If not, then the drinking is usher, because we're concerned that he might bring the wine from the vat to where most of his body is located, and drinking next to the vat is usher because it is considered a more regular manner of consumption and not snacking. Okay, call it Adam minha maschila lemata mi'asar tvachim. A person may stand in the public domain and catch water falling from a roof gutter within 10 tvachim of the ground. However, one may drink in any manner from a drain pipe that juts out from the wall of the house. He can even press his lips on a container or container to the open end of the drain pipe and receive water directly from it, since the open end of such a pipe typically juts out some distance from the wall of the house. The drain pipe is not seen as an extension of the roof, and collecting water in this manner is not usher. Mishnah Zion. Bor Rishus Harabim. There's a pit of water in Rishus Harabim. V'chuliyasa Gavoa Asar Tvachim, and its embankment is 10 Tvachim high. Chalon Shal Gabav, and there is a window in a house that overlooks the pit. Memalin Heimenu b'Shabbos. We may draw water from the pit into the house on Shabbos. Bring water from the pit into the house on Shabbos. Similarly, if there's a trash heap in the Rishus Harabim and it's 10 tvachim high, which is the minimum height of Rishus HaYachid, we may pour water onto it on Shabbos from a window that is above it. Here too, transferring the water is mutter because it goes from one from the Rishus HaYachid, the house, to another Rishus HaYachid. I mean, the trash heap through the airspace, which is more than 10 tvachim above the Rishus Harabim, which is a makom patur. Okay, Mishnah Ches. Ilan shehu meisech al haaretz. Regarding a tree that forms a covering over the ground, branches protrude from all sides of the trunk at a height of at least 10 tefachim above the ground. They slope downward, enclosing the area around the trunk. Im ein gufa gavoa min haaretz shlosh tefachim. If the ends of its branches are not higher than 3 tefachim above the ground, that they're within the 3 tefachim of the ground, we may carry beneath the branches because they are considered partitions that convert the area they enclose into a rishus ha-yachid. If its roots protrude from the earth to a height of 3 tvachim above the ground, one may not sit on them on Shabbos because it is an issa derabanan to use a tree on Shabbos. Hadeles shebamuksa v'chadakim shebepirtza u'machsalos. Regarding a door to a backyard and a bundle of thorns that is used as a door in a gap in a wall, and reed mats that are used as doors, we may not close the doorway with them on Shabbos because pushing them into place resembles the malacha of building. Their use is usher unless they dangle above the ground when not in use. Since they're suspended above the ground, they are clearly attached to the doorway and appear to be designated for use as doors. Closing the doorway with them is not considered bona and is mutter. Mishnah Tes. Lo yamad adam rishus hayachid b'yiftach rishus harabim. Person may not stand in a rishus hayachid and use it to open a door in rishus harabim. So he might bring the key into the rishus hayachid. Rishus harabim yiftach rishus hayachid. Likewise, a person may not stand in a rishus harabim. You pick up a key line in a rishus hayachid and use it to open the door in the rishus hayachid, because you might inadvertently bring the key into the rishus harabim. That's the problem. In the second case, this is aser unless he built a wall 10 tvachim high before Shabbos to convert the area of the rishus harabim in which he is standing into another rishus hayachid. This is according to Rabbi Meir. Amrullah, they said to him, this was the practice in the butcher's market in Yerushalayim, which was similar to a Carmelist. When standing in the market, which is a Carmelist, they will lock their booths, which is a makom patur, and put the key on a windowsill above the door, which is the rishus ha-yachid. This shows that one may stand in a Carmelist and move a key into a rishus ha-yachid, which contradicts the view of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi says, "Shuk shel tzemarim haya." It took place in the wool merchant's market, not in the butcher's market. Rabbi Yossi agrees with the Chachamim in a dispute with a mayor. He only disagrees about where the practice occurred. With the Maisa, the actual halacha they agree upon. Mishnah Yud, Neger Yesh Rosho Glistera, a door bolt that has a round knob on its end, which makes it fit for pounding spices. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Eliezer Oser, Rabbi Eliezer forbids using it as a bolt. It can be used as a utensil to pound spices. He may not insert it into the threshold or wall of a house because he appears to be making an addition to the house, which is an act of bona. Rabbi Yossi Mati, Rabbi Yossi allows it since it's a utensil of sorts. One who uses it as a bolt does not even appear to be building. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Ma'aseh b'knesses shemiteveria shayinogim bo heter." It once happened that there was a bolt with a knob on its end in a synagogue in Tiberia, the shul, and the people there would treat it as its mutter. They would use it on Shabbos to lock the door. Until Rabbi Gamliel came with the Chachamim and prohibited them to do so. Therefore, so we see that using such a bolt is usher on Shabbos. Rabbi Yossi says that the opposite occurred. Isser Naguba, they would treat it as it was usher that they would not use it to lock the door on Shabbos. But Rabbi Gamliel was the king of it to them. But Gamliel came with the Chachamim and permitted them to use it. Mishnah Yud Aleph, Neger and Nigrar. If a plain bolt which lacks a knob is tied to a door with a rope, but the rope is so long that the bolt drags on the ground when not in use, no Beis Hamikdash, we may lock the door with it in the temple. I would love Medina, but not in the rest of the country, anywhere outside the Beis Hamikdash. Since the bolt drags on the ground, not everyone will notice that it's already attached to the door. The Chacham therefore assered one to lock a door with it on Shabbos, because one seems to be adding something new to the structure. Nevertheless, its use is mutter in the Beis Hamikdash because, like the other rabbinic decrees pertaining to Shabbos, this one does not apply in the Beis Hamikdash. We don't. There's no shvus. Ain't shvus Hamikdash, so this does not apply. However, if the bolt is not tied to the door at all, but rests on the ground, using it is forbidden both here, in the Beis Hamikdash and here outside the Beis Hamikdash. In this case, where the bolt is not attached to the door at all, it is a mitzvah. It is a malachat d'oraisa, and therefore one may not lock a door that even in the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yehuda rules more leniently. It says, "Hamunach the mikdash." If the bolt rests on the ground, it's not tied to the door. It is an issa d'Rabbanan. As such, it is mutter in the Beis Hamikdash and not anywhere else, because we know that ain't shvus b'mikdash. V'hanigra b'Medina, and if it drags on the ground, it is mutter in the rest of the country, even outside the Beis Hamikdash. Mishnah Yud Beis, almost there. 4 more to go. Machzirin tzir hatachton b'mikdash avalav b'Medina. We may put the bottom peg of a closet door back into its hole in the Beis Hamikdash, but not in the rest of the country. However, it is forbidden to put the upper peg back both here in the Beis Hamikdash and here outside the Beis Hamikdash. If the upper peg comes out of its hole, the door will fall down, since in that case, fixing it would be a malachat d'oraisa, which is usher even in the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Ha'ayam b'mikdash." The upper peg may be put back in its hole in the Beis Hamikdash, but not elsewhere. Although the door is reattached, this is not, it's a deraisa. Because the malacha of bona does not apply to freestanding structures such as a closet. Nevertheless, it's asur derabanan, and as such, it's permitted only in the Beis Hamikdash. Tachta Medina, and the lower peg may be put back into its hole, even in the rest of the country, because this is mutter, even according to the Chachamim. Mishnah Gimel, Nachzirin B'tia B'mikdash. We may put a dressing back onto a wound in the Beis Hamikdash of a Medina, but not in the rest of the country. Derabanan, it was usher to apply a bandage smeared with ointment on a wound, because he might come to smooth out the ointment, which is deraisa. Nevertheless, a Kohen who had removed a dressing from his hand in order to perform the avoda is allowed to put it back on his hand. But if instead of putting it back, one wants to put the dressing on the wound for the first time, it is usher both in the Beis Hamikdash and outside of it. Kodesh v'nima b'mikdash, we may tie the snap string of a musical instrument in the Beis Hamikdash, v'alav Medina, but not in the rest of the country. But if instead of repairing a broken string, he wants to attach a new string to the instrument for the first time, it's ushered both in the Beis Hamikdash and outside of it. We may cut off a wart by hand from an animal in the Beis Hamikdash, for love of Medina, but not in the rest of the country. It is ushered. It's derabbanan to remove a wart by hand, because one might come to do so with a tool, which is biblically usher under the malacha of shearing. Nevertheless, it is allowed to remove a wart from an animal so that can be brought as a korban in the Beis Hamikdash. But if instead of removing it by hand, one wishes to cut it off with a tool, it is usher both in the Beis Hamikdash and outside of it, because that's a malacha deoraisa. Mishnah Yedalit, Kohen Shalaka Besbo Kohen Chalav Gemi B'mikdash. A Kohen who has a wound on his finger may wrap a reed around it in the Beis Hamikdash. Alav Medina, but not in the rest of the country. It is an derabbanan to wrap a reed around a wound on Shabbos, because the reed helps to heal the wound, and healing procedures are derabbanan. Nevertheless, if a Kohen serving in the Beis Hamikdash has an unsightly wound on his hand, he may cover it with a reed. But if he ties the reed tightly around the wound in order to draw blood from it, the act is usher both here in the Beis Hamikdash and outside the Beis Hamikdash as well. That's a deraisa. It's a deraisa. Boskin melech agabe kevesh b'shvil shelo yachliku. We may crush salt and scatter it on the ramp leading to the mizbeach, so that the kohanim do not slip as they walk up and down the ramp. Although this is a derabanan, this resembles the malacha of boneh, it is mutter in the Beis Hamikdash. Mibor hagola, mibor hagadol b'galgal b'Shabbos. We may draw water with a bucket tied to a wheel from the exiles' well and the great well, which were located on the temple premises on Shabbos. This is also an esed d'Rabbanan, yet permitted in the Mikdash. Miber hakar b'yontif. We may draw water with a bucket tied to a wheel from the well of the source on Yontif, even though that well is not in the Beis Hamikdash. It was a source from which people access the spring water, being fed by a spring. When when people who lived in Chutz La'aretz came up to Yerushalayim for Yontif and they needed to drink water from this particular well, then the Nevi'im among them allowed them to do so using a wheel. Once they allowed it, it remained mutter to draw water from this well on Yontif using a wheel, even though the well was not in the Beis Hamikdash. This permission applied only to that well and not to any other. Okay, and the last Mishnah of Eiruvin, the long one, the last one. And tomorrow on to Pesach. Sheretz. This is Mishnah Tes Vav and Perek Yud. Sheretz Shenimsa the Mikdash Kohen Matziu Behemenu. If a dead sheretz is found in the Beis Hamikdash, a Kohen may remove it with his belt on Shabbos, even though it's muksa and may not be moved any place outside the Beis Hamikdash. Shelo l'shos as a tumah, so it's not to keep the tumah in the Beis Hamikdash longer than necessary. You got to remove a tummy object as quickly as possible. So therefore, he's obligated to pick it up right away with his belt, even though the belt will become tummy. This is according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and he says, he should pick up the sheretz with wooden tongs, which cannot become tamei, and not with his belt. Shlo the rabbos as the tumah, so as not to increase tumah in the mikdash. Though it may take some time to find the wooden tongs, in the meantime, the sheretz will remain in the mikdash. This is preferable to picking it up with its belt and increasing tumah in the mikdash, even if for a short time. So from where in the Beis Hamikdash may he remove it despite it being muksa? We may remove it from the sanctuary, from the antechamber, and from the section of the chutzner between the antechamber and the mizbeach, which are the most sacred parts of the mikdash, but not from a place of lesser sanctity. Rabbi Shimon ben Anas. These are the words of Rabbi Shimon ben Anas. So Rabbi Kiva says, "Makom shechayavin al zedon akaris al shigasu chatas nisham masino." So we remove it from any place that a tummy person is chayiv karis for entering it for entering deliberately, and is chayiv to bring a chatas for entering accidentally if they're tummy. Therefore, if a dead sheretz is found anywhere in the courtyard on Shabbos, it must be removed, and only if it's found outside the courtyard should be left the place until after Shabbos. The shar kol makamas, if a sheretz is found in any other place in the mikdash on Shabbos, kofin, a love, a sechtar, we may cover it with a pot, leave it there until after Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon says, "Makom she'itiru l'chachamim mishalcha nasnu lach." In the place where you are allowed to walk, anywhere within the tchum of the town, they are merely giving you what is yours. That is, even if a person is 15 amos outside the boundary when Shabbos begins, he may go anywhere within the town's tchum. With the markers for a town's tchum, and usually place 15 amos closer to the town than the true boundary. Therefore, even if he's 15, although he's 15 amos beyond the markers, he is still within the tchum. That ruling is it's not some special leniency. It rather simply reflects the reality of the situation. This is not comparable to that of the broken string, which is apparently appropriate to rule stringently. Shalohi tiru lecha ela mishum shvus, because the Chachamim allowed you to do in the Beis Hamikdash only that which is a rabbinic decree, and not that which is innocent d'oraisa. Hence, it is usher to tie the broken string of a musical instrument even in the Beis Hamikdash, because some knots are Isurei Doraisa. Hajan Allah, Eiruvin, and tomorrow we will start with one of my favorite Masechtas, Psachim. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.